EU should ban Indian fuel made from Russian oil, Borrell. New Delhi has become one of the top buyers of the sanctioned country's crude over the past year. The EU should take measures to stop India reselling Russian oil to the region in the form of refined fuels, the EU's foreign policy chief told the Financial Times on Tuesday. Josep Borrell said the bloc was aware that Indian refiners are using large volumes of Russian crude to make fuels for the European market. If diesel or gasoline is entering Europe, coming from India and being produced with Russian oil, that is certainly a circumvention of sanctions and member states have to take measures, Borrell told the news outlet. The diplomat added that he understands India's eagerness to buy Russian oil, given the G7 price cap which bans Russia from selling its oil at a price above $60 per barrel. However, he urged Brussels to block products made from this oil from entering the EU. That India buys Russian oil, it's normal. And if, thanks to our limitations on the price of oil, India can buy this oil much cheaper, well, the less money Russia gets, the better. But if they use that in order to be a center where Russian oil is being refined and byproducts are being sold to us, we have to act, he stated, without clarifying what those actions may be. Borrell added that he is scheduled to meet with Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar later on Tuesday, when the issue will be discussed further. India, the world's third biggest oil consumer, started boosting purchases of Russian crude after Western states placed an embargo and price caps on oil and petroleum products from the sanctioned country. India's imports of Russian seaborne crude oil have reportedly risen tenfold in the financial year ending March 31. However, Indian refiners also use crude from other destinations, including Iraq and Saudi Arabia. This, analysts say, makes identifying the exact origin of a barrel of diesel or gasoline virtually impossible, which in turn may pose a challenge for Brussels to come up with measures that would block refined Russian oil from entering the EU. China, Central Asian countries build up strong economic and trade ties. China's economic and trade cooperation with the 5 Central Asian countries has continued to achieve tangible results since the establishment of diplomatic ties more than 30 years ago, the country's Ministry of Commerce said in a press briefing last Thursday. The briefing came ahead of the China-Central Asia Summit, set to open on May 18, where leaders of the 6 countries are scheduled to meet. Chinese Commerce Ministry spokesperson Xu Jiading said China will take the upcoming summit as an opportunity and work with the 5 countries to bring economic and trade cooperation to a new level. China's trade and investment with Central Asian countries continue to grow. In 2022, China's trade with the 5 countries, namely Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, totaled $70.2 billion, reaching a record high with a 40% increase from a year ago. In the first quarter of 2023, the figure was 22% higher than a year ago, displaying a strong growth momentum. In 1992, when China first established diplomatic ties with the 5 Central Asian countries, trade volume between the countries stood at only $460 million. The trade structure between the countries has also continued to improve over the years. Last year, China's imports of agricultural, energy and mineral products from the 5 countries surged over 50% from a year ago, while its exports of mechanical and electronic products to them jumped by 42%. Trade via cross-border e-commerce rose by as much as 95% in 2022, while close to 300 Central Asian enterprises registered and sold their products on Chinese e-commerce platforms. China is now the largest trading partner of Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, and the second largest trading partner of Kazakhstan, as well as the third largest trading partner of Tajikistan, according to the Commerce Ministry. In terms of investment cooperation, China's direct investment stock in the 5 countries came in at over $15 billion as of the end of March 2023. The cumulative turnover of completed projects reached $63.9 billion. Economic cooperation extends across various fields. 1. Agriculture. China-Central Asian economic cooperation has advanced across a wide range of areas including infrastructure, oil and gas exploration, manufacturing, medical and healthcare, education, technology, and the digital economy. Agriculture has long been a key focus of cooperation between China and its Central Asian partners. According to the Chinese Commerce Ministry, trade in agricultural products climbed from $175 million in 1992 to over $1 billion in 2021. Specialty agricultural products including cotton, honey, camel milk, dried fruit, and cherries from these Central Asian countries have entered into and found demand within the Chinese market. The countries have also stepped up cooperation in transforming the processing of agricultural products, improving the value chain of agricultural products and promoting green agriculture. 2. Energy resources. In view of the rich energy resources of the Central Asian countries and China's huge demand for energy as a major oil and gas consumer, energy has naturally become an important area where China-Central Asian cooperation has borne abundant fruit. Running through Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, the China-Central Asia gas pipeline is China's first transnational gas pipeline. By the end of 2022, the pipeline had delivered a total of 423.2 billion cubic meters of natural gas to China since it became operational in 2009. Major energy projects also include the China-Kazakhstan crude oil pipeline and the Gakhainish gas field. These projects have promoted the social and economic development of countries along the route, in addition to diversifying China's energy imports and improving its domestic energy consumption structure. 3. Transportation and connectivity. Central Asia is a key link along the Belt and Road and the China-Europe Railway Express. A slew of cooperation projects have been launched within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative to boost regional connectivity, such as the Dushanbe-Chanak Highway and the Kamchik Tunnel. Notably, the first passenger flight route between Xi'an, the capital of China's northwestern Shaanxi province, and Ashgabat, capital of Turkmenistan, was officially launched last Saturday. Another similar route between Xi'an and the Tajik capital of Dushanbe will be launched on May 18. The launch of the two air routes will mark the complete linkage of passenger flight routes from Xi'an, the starting point of the ancient Silk Road, to the 5 countries in Central Asia. The growing cooperation in the civil aviation industry is expected to facilitate the economic and trade exchanges between China and the Central Asian countries, and play an important role in achieving the vision of an Air Silk Road. While traditional areas of cooperation have yielded results, several experts have reportedly noted that economic and trade cooperation between China and the 5 Central Asian countries are now extending to emerging sectors such as e-commerce and the digital economy in recent years, where great potential awaits to be tapped. Record low 21% of Americans say good time to buy house, poll. The share of Americans who believe that now is a good time to purchase a house has dropped to 21% in 2023, reaching a new record low, according to a Gallup poll published on Tuesday. 21% of U.S. adults believe it is a good time to buy a house, down 9 percentage points from the prior low recorded last year. The 2022 and 2023 readings are the only times that less than half of Americans have perceived the housing market as being good for buyers in Gallup's trend since 1978, the poll said. The results from April's poll are the worst recorded by Gallup since they began collecting data on people's perception of the U.S. housing market in 1978, when 53% had answered positively. In addition, those polled are more pessimistic when it comes to the prospect of a price drop in the housing market, with only 19% believing that prices will decrease, whereas 56% say they will increase and 25% think no changes will be observed. The overall pessimism can be attributed to both high acquisition prices and higher interest rates, which combined are making mortgage payment less affordable, the poll showed. Nonetheless, investing in real estate is still viewed by Americans as the best long-term investment, well ahead of stocks, gold, and other commodities, the poll said. The poll was conducted via phone interviews from April 3 to 25 among a random sample of 1,013 U.S. nationals throughout the entire country. The margin of error is +4%, with 95% confidence level. 3rd China CEEC Expo and International Consumer Goods Fair opens in Ningbo. The 3rd China Central and Eastern European Countries, CEEC, Expo and International Consumer Goods Fair opened on Tuesday in Ningbo, East China's Zhejiang Province. This year's expo has 3 areas: Central and Eastern Europe Exhibition, International Consumer Goods Exhibition and Imported Commodities Perennial Exhibition, with a total exhibition area of 220,000 square meters. More than 400 overseas exhibitors participated in the exhibition, with more than 5,000 kinds of exhibits. The expo will last until Saturday. China will make comprehensive efforts to ensure services for the expo and promote the high-quality development of economic ties between China and the CEECs, the Ministry of Commerce said on May 11. The ministry has planned a series of economic and trade activities, including a purchasing fair for products from the CEECs, to help the expo achieve pragmatic results, spokesperson Xu Jiuding told at a press conference. Purchase orders worth over 10 billion yuan, about $1.45 billion, for goods from the CEECs are expected to be placed at the expo, according to Li Guanding, vice mayor of Ningbo. Japan to boost Russian LNG imports despite sanctions, diplomat. Tokyo plans to retain stakes in major energy projects in the sanctioned country. Japan will soon benefit from its decision to retain stakes in Russian oil and gas projects despite joining Western sanctions on Moscow over the conflict in Ukraine, the Russian consul general in the city of Sapporo told RIA Novosti news agency on Tuesday. Sergei Marin said Tokyo may gain an additional 2 million tons of Russian liquefied natural gas, LNG, per year once the Arctic LNG 2 project in Russia's Far East is launched. While Japanese firms froze new investment in March 2022 as part of sanctions, they have not withdrawn from the venture. A consortium made up of Mitsui & Co. and Japan's national oil and metals company JOGMEC has retained a 10% stake in Novatek's Arctic LNG 2 project. The project is working, but has not yet started production of LNG. The first production line should be launched by the end of this year, and the second and third in 2024 and 2026. If everything goes according to plan, Japan will add about 2 million more tons of LNG per year to the share it now receives from Russia, Marin said. The diplomat noted that Tokyo has also retained stakes in another oil and gas project in Russia's Far East, Sakhalin-2, which passed to a new domestic operator last year. He added that a number of Japanese energy providers have also signed contracts with the new operator, Sakhalin Energy. The project provides Japan with about 9% of its total LNG imports and 3% of its power supply. Japan's Sakhalin Oil and Gas Development Co., SADACO, also owns a 30% stake in Russia's Sakhalin-1 offshore oil and gas project. Tokyo has joined Western sanctions on Moscow since the start of the conflict in Ukraine last year, including enforcement of a price ceiling on Russian oil imports. However, Japan received an exemption from Washington, excluding supplies from Sakhalin-2 from the cap, and kept stakes in its joint energy projects in Russia, arguing that they are crucial for the country's energy security. EU countries' debt hits historic high. Italy is the second most indebted member state in the Eurozone, after Greece. Italy's sovereign debt has continued to soar, jumping by €17.8 billion, $19.3 billion, in March in monthly terms to hit a record high of €2.79 trillion, $3 trillion, according to the country's central bank. The previous all-time high was reached in February, when debt amounted to €2.78 trillion. The Bank of Italy said on Monday that the surge was driven by an increase in the public sector's borrowing requirement of €31.3 billion, $34 billion, which was partially offset by a reduction in the Treasury's liquid assets to €29.4 billion. New historic record. A worrying and alarming exponential rise given the rate hikes due to the ECB's new restrictive monetary policy, stated Massimiliano Dona, president of the National Consumer Union. According to Dona, if the government debt were divided among the Italian population, it would amount to €47,405 per citizen, or €106,446 per household. Now planning to reduce taxes for everyone with the flat tax means either making fun of the Italians, recovering what you give with the rates with deductions and charges, or getting the country into trouble, Dona warned. For this reason, the government would do well, for the moment, to limit itself to limiting electricity and gas bills, restoring discounts on system charges in the bill. Soaring energy prices have exacerbated the cost of living crisis in the EU's third-largest economy and have pushed up the level of public debt, which amounted to 144% of GDP between October and December 2022, according to the latest data from Eurostat. Italian officials have lashed out at the European Central Bank over its monetary policy, claiming that rate hikes aimed at taming inflation have piled more financial pressure on one of the Eurozone's most indebted countries. The ECB once again increased rates last week, hiking them to 3.25% in an attempt to curb double-digit inflation across the Eurozone. Indonesian state firms cutting ties with Visa and MasterCard, official. A domestic card will be used for budget spending free of charge, a banking executive has said. The Bank of Indonesia, BI, has launched a domestic card payment system as part of a greater strategy to reduce reliance on foreign systems and protect transactions from geopolitical disruptions, CNBC Indonesia reported on Monday. Based on Indonesia's interbank system, Gerbang Pembayaran Nasional, GPN, or the National Payment Gateway is designed for state companies and institutions and will replace Visa and MasterCard as the country seeks more autonomy over its payment infrastructure by minimizing the role of foreign payment providers, the outlet said. According to Dicky Kartikoyono, the head of the Payment System Policy Department at BI, domestic cards process users' private data within the country and do not charge any fees. The card also provides features needed for government institutions to conduct payments such as budget spending on inventories, rent, building maintenance, and official travel, Kartikoyono said. We are launching a government payment card, which we are calling the Indonesian Credit Card. It will facilitate the use of the budget in an efficient manner and provides various opportunities that will encourage medium and small businesses, he added. Indonesian President Joko Widodo earlier urged regional authorities to wean themselves off of foreign payment systems and start using cards issued by local banks. He argued that Indonesia needed to shield itself from geopolitical fallout, citing the sanctions targeting Russia's financial sector from the US, the EU, and their allies over the conflict in Ukraine. In March, Dodit Proboyakti, a board member of the Indonesian Credit Cards Association, AKKI, told RIA Novosti that Indonesia would apply the working knowledge of Russia and its MIR payment system to promote the domestic financial network. Moscow rolled out its own national card system, MIR, soon after the U.S. first targeted the country with sanctions in 2014, and created the Domestic National Payment Card System, NSPK, to smoothly take over all Visa and MasterCard transactions should the US-based companies pull the plug. Top Russian bank expands operations in Crimea. Sber has opened 2 regional branches in the region since the beginning of May. Russia's largest lender, Sber, opened its second branch in Crimea on Monday in the port city of Simferopol, the bank has announced. This comes a week after it opened its first location on the peninsula in Yalta. The new branch will serve both individuals and legal entities, and has a 24-hour ATM zone. Another Sevastopol branch servicing legal entities exclusively will open in July. We felt the demand for Sber services on the peninsula. During the first days of the work of the office in Yalta, despite the holidays, there were more than 1,500 transactions, Anatoly Pazenikov, the head of Sber Southwest, told RBK News outlet, adding that new branches will soon open in Kerch, Evpatoria, and other Crimean cities. Sber did not have a presence in Crimea for the past 9 years after it split with Ukraine and joined Russia following a referendum. The lender could not operate in Crimea due to sanctions imposed by the US and EU on the region after reunification. Prior to the referendum, Sberbank's Ukrainian subsidiary operated on the peninsula. However, after the bank itself was sanctioned by the West last year over Russia's military operation in Ukraine, Crimean Deputy Prime Minister Georgy Muradov urged the bank to restart operations in the region. In the past 9 years, Crimea has had a limited number of banks, as many feared economic repercussions due to the sanctions. Last March, President Vladimir Putin called on Russian businesses and banks to start working in Crimea since they no longer had anything to lose as a result of sanctions. Economics and finance is very necessary to understand because everything is seen here.